Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar dealing with evidence-based strategies shown to bring out the best in your team. I'm Ray Welling, Editor-in-Chief of WorkplaceInfo, and I'm joined today by Joe Moore from Kimber Moore & Associates. Joe, welcome. Joe will also be presenting short interviews with a couple of HR professionals to provide us with some case studies on how this works in a real-life environment. So we'll be hearing from Carolyn Tyler at hearing solutions company Cochlear, along with Simmons from the insurance company QBE. As usual, before we get underway, just wanted to remind you that if you have any technical issues or would like to post a question to our panelists, you can do that by typing your query into the chat box in the lower left corner of the screen. We've received quite a few questions in the lead up to this webinar, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can during the time we have together or as a follow-up. I'd like to point out the information provided in today's webinar is general information only. It does not take into account your own particular work situation and needs. If we're acting on any info contained in this discussion, make sure you consider the appropriateness of the information having regard to your own objectives, work, financial situation, and needs. Now, Joe, to kick off, tell us a bit about some of the best ways to bring out the best in your staff.
Thanks, Ray. So we've got a couple of ideas here that are evidence-based, and we've built them around the interviews with Carolyn and with Linnea. So the first of these four research-based ideas, as a follow-up, we'll send you the link to the research. There are a couple of these factors. So one of them is to keep your people in the loop, to share information, let people know what's going on. Now, it sounds pretty straightforward. However, there are some more strategic questions to ask. And the way through those strategic questions is to sit around with the decision makers and together consider the pros and the cons of sharing particular pieces of information with your employees. And then as a result of that, you'll have the reasons for doing it, and you'll have some of the challenges, typically time, to overcome. But the idea is to share information so that your employees understand how their work fits within your organisation. They get the link between your organisation's purpose and strategy and the work they contribute. Now, you can also share information about business plans, about how you see the future. We know lots of companies who every month sit down and share the P&L with their staff. So I don't see any reason not to do that, except maybe time, and sometimes it doesn't work out. You can do it in a timely way. However, information to employees about your business from you, or about your organisation from those who lead it, lets people know really what's happening. And it saves the rest of us having to kind of guess or figure it out or make up our own stories. You can also share information about business plans and strategy. You can let people have information about the industry trends. For example, recently, in the last few months, Australian businesses got very concerned about penalty rates. And so the argument was from lots of different groups that employee wages were hurting small businesses that deliver, cafe experiences to customers. Well, some places looked up the IBIS research data on cafes and restaurants and found that the biggest increase in costs in the last 5 years has been the cost of the ingredients that cafes buy to either make or just simply sell food that goes with your cappuccinos. So those who shared that information allowed their employees to see that, increase in staff wages is one thing, but there are other costs, and if we can prevent some wastage, we can actually save a lot more money than cutting some aspects of penalty rates. So there's a lot of value in sharing information about you and your team and how it's going, how your team fits into the business, and how the business fits into a broader view of Australian businesses. Access to information provides a sense of learning, a sense of growing and developing, and you can give them more each time that that's happening. Each time you come across more information. It's a practical day-to-day thing. Practically, day-to-day, we also want to keep people in the loop. And that's particularly important when a group in an organisation makes a couple of decisions. As a result of those decisions, often people's life at work changes fairly shortly or in a long term. But it's useful, we've found, to get a discipline around how we convey information about decisions that we've made in organisations. So one way is to have a little structure, a little kind of template for releasing information. So here's our idea. Template's got really 6 headings, and the first one is, this is our situation. These are the challenges we faced, if you like. The second heading is, these were some of the choices we reviewed or considered. The third heading is, this is what we've decided to do. Fourth heading is why. So this is why we've decided to do that. And the last 2 headings are a little bit different, because the second last heading says, here's how you can help. So we have made a decision. This is what it is. This is why it's important. These were the choices we considered. Now we've made our call, and here's how everyone can help. Here's how you can help. And the last heading is usually tricky because not everyone thinks it through, but it's important to let people know this is when you can expect to see a change. This is when you can expect to see a difference. So that's a suggestion for involving staff in keeping them in the loop. We want to move soon to involving staff in making decisions. One way is to convey the decisions that you've made. The involving staff in decisions is tricky because the concern that many people have is that it's really difficult to involve staff in decisions if they don't have a deep sense of skill of decision making. So there's an opportunity there to face up to the challenge of saying, well, if we want to involve people in making decisions, then you know what, we really have to teach them about the process of decision making. Part of that is access to information, so sharing information and getting people involved in decision making are dynamic, they're related. But to expect more of our staff in making decisions, a useful way to start is to map the level of decision making that's available to people now. So one way to do that is to identify the tasks that people are doing and ask yourself the question, how many of these tasks can people perform without having to ask anybody's permission? Now you can do that at every level. So at a customer service desk, typically when dealing with complaints or when people want customer service staff to do something which may not be within their delegation, then it's important to get a list of those things, because there's an opportunity to increase their level of decision making, simply increase the delegation about the kind of questions they can answer. Many questions need to be referred to a manager. Let's have a look at those and see, well, are any of those questions now able to be answered by more frontline staff? So the first step really in deciding to provide people with more discretion in decision making is to work out what level of decisions they can make now and see if that's possible to be increased. Our idea is to increase the discretion, increase the number of decisions, and if you like, the quality of decisions. So that's 2 of the 4 or 5 evidence-based factors that are important to creating meaning at work and getting more out of employees. For cultivating meaningful work, the idea we simply want to leave with you is that to best identify the meaning in work, take your employees to the end user. I mean, this is the task of cultivating meaning in work, I think, is best left to be outsourced to the end user of the work that people do. Now, some end users are within your organisation, but many of them are also your customers, your clients, people with whom you have these customer relationships. So why not find opportunities to get your staff in front of customers and get customers to talk about the experience that they've been provided with? What's good about it, maybe it's not so good about it, where it can be improved, opportunities for feedback, thank yous, and also for opportunities to improve some of the challenges customers might find with the way work is performed. So we're really going to show some examples of that with an interview with Carolyn Tyler.
My name is Carolyn Tyler and I head up the Capability Development and Service Delivery team here at Cochlear. I've been with Cochlear for just over 8 years and my key accountabilities really are, or have been, to look after the learning environment here at Cochlear and ensuring that our people have exposure to the absolute best in terms of being able to learn from outside the organisation and within the organisation from their peers and colleagues. We pride ourselves on having exceptional professionals and engineers all the way through to our manufacturing organisation here. Cochlear is a medical device organisation and we are the world leader in hearing solutions and pride ourselves on our product as well as our culture and the people that are responsible for making that product and bringing it to market. If you've ever looked at Cochlear advertisements or come into Cochlear for an interview, you'll know that our employee value proposition is really around the work, so making sure that we have meaningful work that people can undertake as part of their experience here. The organisation, so working for a company that makes a difference in people's lives, and the opportunity, so really being in that unique position where you can really make a difference through the work that you're doing and because of the organisation that you're working for.
Carolyn, it's actually almost a magical company, isn't it? The products and the difference it makes to people. And I know that people is a word all through your mission statement. So my question is, can you tell us about the human factors at Cochlear?
So you're right. A lot of people do come to work for Cochlear because they feel like they understand the sort of heart of the organisation and where we're headed and want to contribute to making a difference. When they do join, we find that, you know, it becomes more sort of regular work, and trying to sustain that connection, that passion that brings people in the door becomes the important work for us, and making sure that people don't forget what we're here for. So really for us it's about that promise that we make to employees as they join the organisation, making sure that that's alive and well all the way through their time with us. And that includes right from the get-go the induction program that we involve all employees in. So we make sure that they understand through that process that that each of them make a really solid and important contribution through their work. So we have a 3-day program that runs, and we bring in our customers. So we'll bring in people to talk to that group of employees, and we run it for all of our employees. So that means we have people from support functions like finance and IT in the room, listening to someone whose life has been changed by having one of our products or as part of their lives, and they get a real palpable sense of the fact that everybody's role contributes to making a difference to not only that individual but all of our customers. So both in a positive way and in a negative way if we don't pull together and make sure that we're doing our best to serve customers. In terms of our culture, we have the sort of standard things that other organisations have in terms of our values, and also our behavioural competencies, and those competencies are really critical in terms of performance. So we go about our work making sure that we not only focus on getting the job done, so the mechanics and the what gets done, but equally as important is the how we go about interacting with each other and making sure that every employee understands that those competencies are critical in everyone's roles. So, for example, we will have, and they're all rated sort of equally or viewed equally in terms of collaboration, which is a really key piece, as well as contributing to team performance, so making sure people understand that it's not an individual goal-oriented organisation, it's a cross-functional and highly collaborative culture that makes us successful.
So Carolyn, the big human factor is it's meaningful work because it makes a difference to people's lives. Mm-hmm. And so it gets off to a great start with the induction program.
Yep.
So how would you take it, so after 5 years,
yep.
How does that go into the day-to-day?
Yep. So it's a great question. We I think initially, certainly in my time here, we took a lot for granted, the fact that we have such a powerful mission and we have such a wonderful product that changes lives, and quickly over the years have recognised that we need to continually reinforce that connection, so that 5 years down the track people aren't sort of feeling disconnected. So we have a few different things, a few different ways in which people are still connected ongoing. One of those is we have lunch sessions where we'll continue to make sure that we're not only connecting different teams together in terms of very interactive seminars, but also connecting them back in with customers, both again from a positive as well as a way to look at how we can improve. So we have a customer connections site on our internal intranet, and we've set that up so that we can offer opportunities for employees to sign up to attend our surgery conferences, so where we invite surgeons in from overseas. We have opportunities for employees to sit in on mapping sessions, so where we have customers coming in to test new product. We have spaces for our employees to engage in that way, and we also have opportunities for people to go across to the hearing hub across the way. So we're now in this fantastic precinct where we are much more closely connected with some of our partners in the industry. But over at the hearing hub, again, there are opportunities there to work with our ANZ team who are based there, but also have more involvement with some of our partners through different initiatives. For our manufacturing organisation, we also continue to run sessions, and I have a fantastic audiologist with 25 plus years of experience actually as a customer prior to joining Cochlear, and she runs sessions with them, again with customers coming in, but also sometimes without the customer being present. And there was a fantastic post on Facebook through our Cochlear Australia New Zealand page that I saw yesterday actually, which was the customer who had come in to talk to the manufacturing group, recalling how the session ran. And he talked about the fact that the head of manufacturing had read out a list of all of the people that were involved in the process of making that person's implant.
It's a big post.
As he read out the names, the people in the room who were present would stand up so that the customer at the front could, sort of say thank you to those people. And really, it might seem a bit quirky, but for those employees that are on a production line making product that's sort of separate to how it actually plays out in someone's life, it's really satisfying to be able to look at the person in the eye and understand that you've made such a massive difference, because it is a very powerful experience for the customer. When you're sitting there churning through product on a daily basis, you can lose sight of that.
Especially, a lot of those folk work in a laboratory, like a pretty controlled environment.
That's right.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So that exposure is...
it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. What's the feedback from people who get that exposure from your folk? What do they say?
The feedback is very positive.
Yeah.
They feel much more energised about the work that they're doing, and we always, and even for the specialist in my team who runs those, for her as well as the person responsible for delivering or designing those sessions, she feels a huge sense of satisfaction. They all recognise her when she goes down through the production area, and because they're so excited to have been involved in those sessions, they really feel much more a part of the business. And we've been doing things like that with our staff AGMs as well, where we bring the production, all employees, but also the manufacturing staff together to hear stories of recipients. We always have customers come in and present about their experience. So we try on a regular basis to make sure that that's front of mind for people.
And it sounds like, so one of the competencies you mentioned earlier, I think, was about collaboration.
Yeah.
So the human factor of being kept where you do things that keep employee staff in touch with customers. So I guess the collaboration puts them in touch with others who benefit from their particular piece of work as well. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we have, I've experienced anyway personally, and many other organisations, it's quite easy to become quite siloed in how you operate, and so making sure that the teams are working together, but also sharing their experiences, sharing information and knowledge with other teams within the organisation is really important. Of course, there are going to be more groups that have the advantage of being a lot closer to the customer than other groups, which is why I sort of mentioned the support functions. They're the functions that least have that access to customers. So yes, making sure that collaboration exists and that information and knowledge sharing across teams is really important.
Yeah. Carolyn, thank you. You make a lot of sense out of the key factor of providing meaningful work for people, given that that's one of the reasons why they're attracted to work here. But to keep it up day after day after day takes work.
Absolutely, and it's not something you can take for granted.
Yeah.
And rest on that assumption that people are always going to put in 150% because of the end goal. It is, important to make sure that that's always kept alive for them.
So, can I ask you for one final sentiment on people factor at Cochlear?
So I think it's always really important to remember that everyone really does want to make a difference in their work. I know the more cynical view can be some people will turn up just for the paycheck, but I do believe strongly that, and I've seen that play out, that individuals do want to make a meaningful contribution through the work that they do, no matter what that is. And it's our responsibility to enable that to occur for people, and their accountability to also take up that opportunity.
It's has to play both ways.
That's right.
Carolyn Tyler, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So providing the opportunity to make a contribution at work and to find work meaningful, one of the platforms on which that's based is that you have a workplace which is characterised by or with respectful behaviour. Now, I don't know if you feel the same as me, but I would love to be able to talk about work and be able to take the concept of respect for granted. I wish it was just like breathing. We never really talk about breathing at work. We just do it well, most of the time. And it'd be lovely if respect was the same way. That just happens without any need for workshops, any need for values clarification exercises or anything like that. But we know different. We do know different. The results of engagement surveys of public sector, private organisations, the published ethical behaviour studies by, for example, the St James Ethics Centre, you read that stuff and you find that many people's experiences of life at work is anything but respectful. And you put that up against the research, for example, the 2014 HBR study, we'll send you a link to that in the follow-up, found that being treated with respect has a clear impact on engagement, even health, but levels of trust in organisation, level of safety, how much we enjoy work, how well we focus, and how productive we are. Whereas a focus on disrespectful behaviour simply creates more problems. So a couple of ideas about cultivating, building respectful behaviour at work. The first idea is that this is an exercise which I think should be done with groups of people who work together. Now, in that, it takes half an hour. Simply get the group together, ask them for their experiences, and get them to be specific about behaviours. We don't need the names, but we want the behaviour. What kind of behaviours make you feel respected at work, and what kind of behaviours make you feel disrespected at work? Respect is one of those concepts which has to get down to quite specific examples of what it is and what it's not. Once you have that list, publish it, post it, get it up on the walls so there's a constant reminder of what it means to behave respectfully when we work together and what kind of behaviours do we want to see less of. Let's face it, you're not going to suddenly overnight, or maybe ever, eliminate all disrespectful behaviour. What you want is for its frequency to be reduced and for us to know what to do when someone else's behaviour bothers us. So the first thing is get people who work together to define for themselves, when we work together, what does it mean to be respectful? Now in that, because there's some recent evidence about the extent of cyberbullying, which is bad behaviour where we use social media. So it might be useful to, in that workshop, in that conversation, get people also to consider what's a respectful use of social media and what kind of social media usages should we try and avoid. So the first step is get it sorted about what it means to be respectful and what are some behaviours to avoid because they lead to disrespect. The second conversation I'd encourage you to have with staff, again, it's in a smaller workshops, is to give them some information about the impact of bad behaviour and, importantly, how small acts of bad behaviour can sometimes escalate to more grander misbehaviours, to breaches of conduct. This escalation from maybe, if we like the expression, low-level kind of poor behaviour to more difficult behaviour is also a factor of the research, and it encourages us to not ignore low-order problem behaviours. Being able to get away with being a bit rude, a bit late, a bit disrespectful might encourage people to push the envelope with the extent to which they behave badly. So the third thing is you might find that you need to give your staff some skills in handling disagreements with each other. Now you'll know you have to do this, or whether you don't have to do this, by talking to some human resources people. Have a conversation with them and ask them questions like, for all the grievances which got lodged in since you've been with us, how many of them do you think would have been resolved if there had been a focused conversation between the people involved in the grievance? So you're saying to the HR person, you know, if you look at these files and you ask yourself the question, do you reckon this could have been resolved if there'd been a chat between the people involved before they put the stuff in writing? And if the answer is yes, could have been fixed if they'd talked to each other and they didn't, then you know you've got a need to teach people how to talk to each other when they're bothered by each other's behaviour. If they knew how to do it, you'd want to assume they would have done that before they lodged a formal complaint. So people aren't talking to each other about the kind of behaviours that bother them. And one of the reasons for that is that they actually don't know how to have that conversation respectfully. They don't know how to have it constructively. Now, we're not going to go into that in this webinar. If you Google conversations about difficult behaviour, you'll find more than enough resources about how to structure the conversation. The important message from us is have some training to help your people have those conversations and then hold them accountable for having the conversations. So once you've taught people how to deal with poor behaviour from each other respectfully, then after that, someone comes to you as a manager and says, "You got to talk to Joe, he's annoying me again," then your response should be, "Have you talked to Joe?" Because that's now your accountability. Now, if that conversation doesn't go well or Joe still doesn't respond appropriately, then sure, you can intervene then. But the first call to action is for the people involved in the difficulty to have the conversation. Now, with some expertise about how to have those conversations about someone else's difficult behaviour, it's worthwhile running a workshop as well about how to take feedback. And again, really there's all sorts of ways of doing it. The evidence suggests that the important thing is that you train people in how to take feedback so that they can get over those initial defensive responses that we all feel, which allows them then to focus on the intent, the meaning, the behaviour that's being described, rather than the person who's describing your poor behaviour. So 3 ideas: let people define what respect is, what it doesn't look like, train them in how to have conversations with each other about difficult behaviour, give them some expertise as well in how to deal with the feedback when they are the subject of a conversation about their difficult behaviour. Now, you would have heard from Carolyn that Cochlear is about collaboration. It's one of their core competencies, so getting people to work together from quite different backgrounds. In those environments, you can expect disagreement. In fact, one of the reasons for getting people with different disciplines, different backgrounds to collaborate is to harness and make sense of the different ideas. So we expect to get disagreement. What we don't expect is poor behaviour. So the 4th idea for cultivating respectful behaviour, we think is about helping people to disagree without being disagreeable. So how do you do that? It's about helping people to focus on the issue at hand rather than the personality of the person who's talking to the issue. So for that, it might be a good idea to refresh their experience and expertise with problem-solving facilitation skills. And again, they're widely available. The important thing is to help people acquire a number of problem-solving skills. That gives them a tool to focus on what's going on and to be able to voice their disagreement without having to be disagreeable. So cultivating respectful behaviour is another evidence-based key to helping us bring out the best in people. To illustrate more about other human factors at work, we've also recorded an interview with Linnea Simmons from QBE.
I am Linnea Simmons. So my key accountabilities at QBE are looking after a team of people who manage our customer relations and dispute resolution area. So we're dealing with resolving the complaints from our customers and providing them with a customer experience that turns it around. So it's not, I suppose purely about meeting compliance requirements. It's about trying to provide that customer with a resolution to their situation so they walk away with a positive experience rather than a negative one. In the course of doing that, I get to engage with a lot of business areas within QBE, and I get to, I suppose, develop the people that report to me directly or indirectly. And I suppose what I really notice is the importance of leadership and management in doing that. What we do isn't easy. QBE is responsible for providing people with insurance. So we're a global insurer that looks to do that for all sorts of business products, so both business and private insurances. And really we've got a very connected role within the community. So, it's a promise until someone has a claim, and then it's about how we fulfil that promise. And the role I'm holding at the moment is really looking at how do I get my team to do the best they can at the end of that customer experience if it's not gone well.
And it's for customers that are both private and business?
Yes.
Your team? Okay.
So from the homeowner or the motor vehicle owner through to the business owners and all their business insurances. So it's a very diverse area that we're responsible for, and if I look at the key human factors at work for us, it's about trying to create that connection with our customers and providing our staff with the opportunity to understand the diverse business and personal situations they find themselves in, so that we can really look at how they can connect with their work and provide solutions to people who aren't in the best possible situations.
So can you tell us a bit more about how you make the links between your staff or your team and the experience of customers?
What I've really noticed over the time I've been with QBE is they've strongly encouraged people to meet face to face. So, in my past role, we were looking after injured people through workers' compensation. And in this role, I've noticed it as well, that if we're able to see footage of the damage a person's experienced, photographs, or meet with them on site and actually have them tell us their story, there's no better way to connect and understand what a person's been through. I think it's also, if we're having to communicate difficult news, just that integrity of doing it face to face really makes a difference. Another great thing I've really noticed recently is we're using social media and videos to allow customers to tell us their story. So at regular communications with our senior management, they'll share a story or feedback from a customer direct, whether it be someone whose house is burnt down and how we've rebuilt that, and really express the teamwork and collaboration it takes to make those things happen. And I suppose what I also notice is the opportunity that gives people to then look at what are the extras that QBE can provide. We're not just going to pay a claim, but we're in a position where our expertise means we can recognise the added extras that a customer's going to need that they haven't even really appreciated yet is going to be important to them and getting back on their feet. I think if I think about the human factors that make a difference in our environment, it's the investment in our leadership capability. So QBE's got a leadership academy, and in my time with QBE I've really noticed how there's a lot of investment in leadership development, but also the investments around actually how you are given space to make decisions as a leader. But what's core to that is how you then connect with the people who report to you. either through having one-on-one conversations regularly or really seeking to understand what drives them, what's unique about them and how it can fit within our organisation and, you know, drive a contribution and achievement. And that's something that I suppose I didn't realise was playing out until I thought about it. That not only am I guided and given skills to manage through these programs, but I'm also given space then to exercise judgment, make decisions, and the accountability of, you know, providing an experience for the team that report to me that means that they're engaged in their work, they understand the purpose of their work, and I've actually tailored the responsibilities I give them based on an intimate understanding of what they're about and what drives them.
So it's very interesting, isn't it? The first human factor you talk about is the connection of employees, staff at QBE with their customers. And that can be, and it's curious as well, I mean, through social media as well as face-to-face. But then that connection with people continues with leaders connecting people who together contribute to whatever the product or the result or the service is. And tell me how, so have you experienced the space to, I guess, experiment, make decision, see how it went, and to be held accountable, I guess, for trying it out as well as for the result? Would that be, you're nodding, so tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind when you ask that question is how we're trying to foster innovation. And it's fair to say we're in the business of insurance, so we're very risk aware and very conscious of making intelligent risk decisions. We have to be to provide the profit to our shareholders and achieve those performance or goals that are financially related. But at the same time, you've got the balancing act of giving people space to pursue improvement initiatives, feel empowered to raise ideas, to express innovations. One of the things I thought was wonderful that we've done is actually had an innovation forum supported by a Crowdicity platform where people got to post ideas, vote on those ideas, and we all got visibility of how we could make a difference internally but still give the integrity of a valid risk assessment to the overall ideas that then were pursued. I think what I really notice is because we're balancing the risk management idea with the people empowerment need, we've got good frameworks around doing that. So whether it's project management frameworks or risk reward analysis that we're doing, we're really partnering people up with business improvement expertise, change expertise, to feel empowered in their management capacity, but supported by the technical resources that mean we can do it well. And the two are a strong complement. It means that my experience as a manager has been I can brainstorm an idea because I'm functionally aware of what might work well in my particular business area, but I'll be complemented by someone who's aware of our overall organisation strategy, has business improvement expertise, and the two knowledge sources come together to mean it gets done mitigating the chance of failure, but also looking at what's the learning that comes from those opportunities too.
And then I guess the accountability, so do you get a sense of being held responsible or accountable for implementing what you've been learning?
Definitely. I think it's one thing to have a good idea, but that execution and then the ability to measure that good idea, continuous improvement cycles that we work through have that infrastructure to mean, well, what is the measure of success going to be? How are we going to know when we've got there, and how can we use that to, be celebrating progress, checking we're on track, and that we're not at risk of failing because we're spotting it and actually rewarding the expected goal of the implementation. I think that infrastructure I actually like because it means the accountability is driven by a shared commitment to the goal. We all want the end result. So it's not done in a punitive respect at all. It's very much around how do we enable people to have a voice in the development, leverage the knowledge that we've got available through subject matter experts, etc. But within an infrastructure that means the expertise to deliver is also supporting the initiative as well.
Linnea, thank you. I know it's been brief, but there's a lot in what you've been saying. One final word from you on the human factors at work.
It's a hard task, but if you can remain focused on striking the balance between support and empowerment, you'll end up unleashing the diversity of the people that you've got rather than creating, I suppose, a management by numbers approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Linnea, thanks for that as well with the case study from QBE. If you've got some interesting stories that you'd like to include on our future webinars, then I'm sure if you write to us, we'll be happy to come out and talk to you and listen to what you've got to say. But we've used Carolyn and Linnea as practical examples to give some demonstration to some research-based ideas about helping people more actively contribute and participate at work rather than just come in and kind of be a bystander. So those strategies are around providing more information, sharing information, allowing for discretion in decision making, and importantly, cultivating, building a more respectful workplace. We've got some time for a couple of questions now as well. So let me read the question, then answer it. Well, see if we can answer it. First question is, what part does having some element of control over one's work environment have on engagement and satisfaction? Now, it's hard to be precise about the answer. Certainly, in every study of engagement and satisfaction that I've ever read, one of the factors that is listed in a table headed something like factors which contribute to employee engagement, in there somewhere in the list you'll find having some control over your work environment. Now that can vary. It might be that you can't choose what to do, you can simply choose what order in which you do it, but you and I know there are many jobs where the sequence is vital to completing to getting a finished product that works. So the answer is, briefly, John, that having control over your work, how it's done, how fast it's done, is one of the contributing factors that's always listed in a list of factors which say these things are about high levels of engagement, high levels of satisfaction. I don't know of any study which has isolated the level of control and enabled and then seen how that in isolation contributes, but it certainly is a factor which is included on every table about factors important to engagement and satisfaction. Another question is this: how do you sustain passion through constant change? Now, the key to answering that for employees is to identify the level of acceptance of change that an individual or a group of employees is at. There are some different mindsets amongst the group of employees about change. Some are up for it and they're willing for it and they want to get involved in it and they actually initiate, they volunteer. To sustain their passion is a bit like any kind of maintenance task. Your conversation with those people is about how well they're doing, the contribution they're making, what other ideas do they have, what other opportunities do they see for the organisation to make changes. Now let's go to some extremes. At the other extreme, you've got a group of people whose appetite for change is very small, whose mindset is, we don't really need to change. Now with them, your task is not to sustain their passion, it's actually to get some passion for the change. So for them, I'd suggest an exercise where you sit down with them, be very specific about a change that's being proposed or that's already in place, and you get them to look at the pros and the cons of making that change. That starts a conversation which gets on the table, if you like, literally on the table. So what advantages do we see in making the change? But it also tells you what some of the pitfalls, what some of the reasons against it might be. So it gives you some other questions to find answers to. So that was about sustaining passion through constant change. Another question is, how do we improve collaboration at work, and how do you measure it? Now, the key to that is to ask yourself the question, why do you want people to collaborate? And what do you mean by collaboration? Now, that's really your question to answer wherever you work if you're interested in collaboration. What do you think it looks like for you? And what would be the evidence that you go looking for to find that you've actually got collaboration? Now, the answers to those two questions give you how to measure collaboration, because it tells you what to measure. It'll give you something you can count, number of times people work with others outside their own team, for example, or it'll give you behaviours that you can measure, if you like, the quantity of. You can ask people, how well do you get along with groups, team members from outside your team? How easy do you find them to work with? How straightforward is it to get information from a team that you don't, of which you're not a member? So the idea for improving collaboration at work and measuring it is to first figure out for you, what does collaboration look like? What are some of the collaborative behaviours? And then you can go looking for them. Final question's a bit different, and it says, how do you keep staff compliant to company policy when they know the company is not in a position to dismiss them because of their unique knowledge and skills? So it's another great question, and I'd make it even more difficult and say, well, how do you get staff to do the right thing when no one's looking? Which is kind of like Sean's question as well. And when the straightforward answer is, there's more to discipline than sacking someone. So we can be a bit creative about how we discipline people at work who choose to continue to make bad decisions. In this case, it's about company policy. So there's an immediate answer. My answer is, there are lots of ways to discipline people without resorting to firing them. The longer term answer, though, is a bit different, and it says, how do we encourage people at work to make better decisions, regardless of whether they're being, irrespective of whether we're watching them at the time? And the answer to that involves doing a number of things. Firstly, it involves figuring out what are good decisions. How well have we trained people to make good decisions, and the whole business of how we go about holding people accountable for making better decisions at work. All of those three ideas demand, in some cases, extensive conversations with groups of people about how do we prevent things going wrong and what do we do when things do go wrong. And I'll include some references to that question in our follow-up material, ways to answer it. Thanks, Ray.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Joe, and Caroline and Linnea. It was really illuminating to get some real-life examples of how these sort of things play out in practice. Now, just before we wrap up this afternoon's webinar, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and tell you a bit about a new resource that's soon going to be available on WorkplaceInfo that we've been working on with Joe. It's called the Positive Workplace Project, and it builds on some of the information that we talked about in today's webinar. The Positive Workplace aims to provide you with platforms for change in areas like a respectful workplace, as we were talking about today, healthy workplace, aspects of leading, coaching, and productive dissent. Each platform includes a number of education modules that you'll be able to complete at your own pace. The content that we're going to be producing ranges from podcasts, case studies, infographics, activities, tips, to-dos, checklists, and links to resources both on WorkplaceInfo and external resources. The Positive Workplace will be available as an added service to WorkplaceInfo subscribers, so keep an eye on your inbox for an announcement soon with an official launch date. And if you've been thinking about becoming a WorkplaceInfo subscriber, now is a great time to sign up so you can make sure you get access to this innovative educational tool for HR. So we hope you found today's session useful. Please feel free to drop us a line at editor@workplaceinfo.com.au if you have any follow-up questions. And make sure you log on to WorkplaceInfo and Workplace OHS for the latest information on compliance and best practices for HR, IR, and work safety professionals. If you'd like to revisit today's presentation, we'll be publishing an archive on our YouTube channel, which you can watch and listen to at your leisure. We'll be sending you that URL along with a lot of the other information, as Joe mentioned, in our follow-up correspondence. Keep an eye on your email inbox for information on things like our upcoming webinars, including next month, where we'll be talking about diversity issues, which encompasses both disability inclusion and aged workers. And then in April, we'll be talking about recruitment. I'd like to thank you for your time and wish you all